Embedded microservices. In the previous video, we built a dice roll microservice. We are now going to take this a step further and build a microservice that rolls 2 dice and returns the sum of 2. Warewolf allows you to reuse microservices as components, so we can reuse the dice roll microservice that we just built as a component. First, create a new microservice. Next, we are going to reuse your original dice roll microservice as a component. As mentioned a little earlier, you can drag resources from the Explorer onto your design surface just as you drag tools onto the design surface. When you drop a resource onto the design surface from the Explorer, it will open in large view. Most tools and resources have both a large view and a small view. The large view of the tool or resource shows all of the available configuration options. If you look at the large view result field, you will see it contains the variable called result that we originally assigned in the random tool in the dice roll microservice. Warewolf automatically assigns the variable names that you originally assigned. I will double-click the icon bar located at the top to return this to small view. If we look at the variables list, you can see that when you dragged the dice roll microservice into Warewolf, it automatically created a variable called result in Double Dice Roll 2. Because we want to roll 2 die, we are going to reuse the dice roll microservice as a component. Drag on a second dice roll microservice and connect it below the first one in the workflow. The result variable in the embedded microservice is assigned to an internal variable called result. The same issue applies to both of the embedded dice roll microservices. What we need to do is assign unique internal variable names to both. Change the mapped variable name to dice1 for the first dice roll, and for the second dice roll, change the mapped variable name to dice2. Warewolf has automatically created the 2 new variables. Notice the small trash icon next to result. The trash icon displays because the result variable is no longer being used in the workflow. To remove it, simply click the trash icon. We want our microservice to output the results of the double dice roll, so we need to flag the dice1 and dice2 variable as an output variable using the checkbox in the variable list like we did previously. Save the new microservice as double dice roll. Using the debugger, you can examine how a workflow runs in detail. To see the debug output for double dice roll, click on the Debug button on the toolbar. The Debug dialog window displays in the middle of the screen. Click the Debug button on the dialog window to run the microservice in debug mode. Instead of using the Toolbox Debug button, you can also use shortcut keys F6, which runs the debugger, and F7, which views the output in your browser. Let's have a look at what the debug output looks like for double dice roll. The debug output window is located below the variable list to the right of your design surface. The debug output displays detailed output for each step in the workflow. Service. We can see that the dice roll service is being run here, even though we are actually working in the double dice roll service. Server. We haven't touched on this yet, but in the same way you embedded 2 dice roll microservices into double dice roll, you can also embed microservices from remote Warewolf servers. This means that your microservice can actually run and receive output from a Warewolf server located anywhere on Earth simply by dragging and dropping the remote microservice into your workflow. Type. Service is a connector or workflow. Each type of tool or resource that can be dropped onto the design surface has a type. end time, the time to the millisecond when the step stopped executing. Duration. This step executed for 0.140 of a second. Inputs. This microservice doesn't have any input values, so the input value does not appear. Outputs. The dice roll returned the value of 4 for dice 1 and 1 for dice 2. When you click on the steps in the Debug Output, a blue highlight frame appears around the debug step. The corresponding step that is executing on the design surface is also highlighted in orange. You can click through the debug steps and easily see in the flow what step is being executed. This is useful when you find an error in the debug output that you want to fix, because you can easily locate the tool where the error is occurring. If we run the microservice in debug mode, the output looks like this. Looking at step 4, you can see that the microservice has the two output variables for dice 1 and dice 2 assigned. You can also see that dice 1 is being assigned in step 2, and dice 2 is being assigned in step 3. The next output we want to include in our microservice is the total of the two dice values. Find the Assign tool in the Data category or search for it by name in the filter of the toolbox. Drag an Assign tool onto your design surface and add it to the end of your workflow. In the field in the left, add a new variable called dice total. On the right, add the two dice variables together by typing the following: equals dice 1 plus dice 2. Don't forget to add the double brackets on both sides of the variable. You will notice that as soon as you type the equal sign, the FX symbol appears. This means you have entered formula mode. Warewolf has a powerful formula system built into the variable assignment that is functionally and syntactically equivalent to Microsoft Excel. Next, flag dice total as an output variable. When we run the microservice in debug mode now, the last two debug steps will look similar to the output earlier on. If we look at the assign inputs, we see how Warewolf interprets our logic and produces a new output variable. The last debug step now shows three output variables, including dice total, which is the sum of dice 1 and dice 2. If we run the debug output in browser mode, F7, you can see how Warewolf structures the XML output for multiple output variables. Refresh your browser to execute the microservice again for different random results.